May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm D.C. Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal practice of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, one Mr. John Bales, old friend, was with the Zen Center for many years, and hey, listen, I'm going to read you something on him. He's the founder and head teacher of One Heart Zen, oneheartzen.org, in Somerville, Massachusetts, outside of Cambridge. Anyway, he's also the chaplain, college chaplain, and Buddhist life counselor at Wellesley College. I'm going to read you their little bio on him. Now, all this stuff you're going to hear in the podcast, but this will give you a little intro. John trained for 13 years as a Zen Buddhist priest in the monastic and temple settings of the San Francisco Zen Center. After leaving the Zen community to practice as an ordinary citizen, he received a degree in international political economy from Harvard University, developed the Investment Advisory and Securities Division of a regional financial planning firm in the Boston area, married the artist Jessa Damora, participated in a sailboat race around the world in 2000-2001, and became a professional sailboat captain. In 2004, John returned to community Dharma practice, was formally recognized as a Zen Buddhist teacher by Zoketsu Norman Fisher, and established One Heart Zen, a Zen Buddhist-based practice and educational organization, in order to share the Zen attitude, spirit, and practice with the world. Now a college chaplain and Buddhist community coordinator, John leads weekly meditations and various Buddhist religious holiday ceremonies throughout the year. He has developed a mindfulness meditation program introducing students to the basics of meditation and mindfulness practice and helping to integrate these practices into their daily lives. Hey, that's pretty good. So listen, after we've had our pause to meditate, let's give John a call and see what he's up to, okay? So when you hear the bell, if you've set your mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you want. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause and we'll end the meditation or whatever. And then we'll get going with John Bales.
Hi.
Oh, hi, John. Very good. Here we are.
Hey, David.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
How's here?
All's fine here. So what are you up to?
What am I up to?
Yeah.
Well, rumor has it that I teach Zen.
Yeah, let's hear about it.
Well, I just did the Tuesday evening Zazen and Dharma talk. Finished about 10 minutes ago.
No kidding. Wow.
No kidding.
And where did this happen?
It happened right where I am right now in what I call the Zendio. It's sort of a studio Zen joint.
Yeah.
And I've got half of it set up, well, at least before COVID, as a Zendo.
Yeah.
With, an altar and zafus and all that stuff. And now I just sort of sit there with my MacBook and sit zazen with people across Zoom, across sometimes the world and mostly the United States.
And where are you located?
Oh, Somerville, Massachusetts, contiguous with like Cambridge and Boston.
And what's the name of your group?
One Heart Zen.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
One Heart Zen. So if somebody wants to find it, they can go to oneheartzen.com.
Yeah. OneHeartZen.org.
One Heart.
Out there.
Yeah. OneHeartZen.org.
You got it.
OneHeartZen.org. All right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Cool. Yeah. So, like we do a whole, I mean, Monday through Friday at 6:30 a.m. and then every Tuesday evening and Saturday morning, Zazen and a Dharma talk. Once a month, full day sitting. And then we had been doing more, multiple day sittings over Zoom. And recently we did about a month ago now, our first residential retreat session for 4 days that culminated in a Jukai, a Bodhisattva precept ceremony.
Yeah. Well,
so I signed a bunch of people up to be bodhisattvas.
All right. And so nobody's coming to your place now?
Right now, yeah. We've been pretty much in lockdown, partially because my 97-year-old mother-in-law moved in with us at the beginning of COVID because we didn't want to be separated from her.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew she was dying. So she lived with us and then died last November. But also my wife, Jessa, has had what we thought was autoimmune issues, but she has something called dysautonomia, and she's quite, she can be quite fragile. So we've been really, I'll call it strict or careful.
Yeah.
About the COVID thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise I do, so I do this One Heart Zen gig, and I also am a chaplain at a place called Wellesley College.
Oh, yeah. That's very well known.
It used to be a high-end, women's elite college.
Right.
And I'm also recently begun working at this other high-end joint called Amherst College.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And just really loving it.
Yeah.
The kids are pretty outrageous. They need a lot of help. So do I. So it all works out.
That's great.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing that there?
Here's the story. You remember Kensho, David Schneider?
Yeah, sure.
Well, David, somewhere around 2004, called me up out of the blue. Well, sort of out of the blue. We'd maintained some contact. And he said, John, I'm leading this month-long retreat in France. Do you want to come? So I said, sure. What's the date? I'll be there. So I hadn't been practicing, how shall I say, visibly, community-wise, and so on, since I pretty much left Zen Center.
Hey, well, when did he do this? What was the year?
2004.
Uh-huh. All right.
So I went off and I sat there with all these Shambhala people.
Yeah.
And hung out with David, and hung out with some of the other senior, well, call them senior students there, who'd studied with Trungpa Rinpoche and so on, and felt like, wow, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Why the fuck am I not doing this? So I then did another month-long retreat with them and really enjoyed them. And I realized that, though, that I'm a Zen guy. So I racked my brain to say, geez, who can I talk to about this in the Zen world, really? And the only person I thought of was Norman.
Norman Fisher.
So I gave Norman a call. Norman Fisher. So I gave Norman a call, and I said, well, Norman, I think it's time for me to get, I don't want to, transmission. And he said, yeah, I can hear it in your voice, whatever that means. And so I said, I can help you with that. I gave him a little bit of what had gone on. And so then I started working with Norman, like traveling out to California every other month and attending sessions that he led for a few years. And then I did Shuso thing in like 2008 at the Red Cedar Zen place up in Bellingham.
Oh, wow. That's great. Right by Canada.
Yeah. So I had the, how should I say, the ability to be able to say, well, I can just move out there for 8 weeks and do this. And they had a house I could live in and so on, and even a car. So I moved out there and did that. And it was really, for me, it was, and I think for people there, it was quite a beautiful experience. I made it was just really wonderful. So, and then we started the, whatever they call it, the Shiho study thing for the transmission stuff. And I applied myself to that, and there was a whole cohort of people. It included Peter Vandersteer, Jeff, come on, Jeff's last name.
Bickner?
Bickner, and Jay Simino, and Meg Gawler, and come on, wrap your brain again, John. Chris Fortin. And we were all sort of like a transmission cohort. We spent a week together and did all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was tremendous. Norman was tremendously generous and not a pain in the ass. He was just wonderful. Yeah. What I said to people in the this is what I remember I said, and in the Shuso ceremony at the end, I think I had to say something, and I said, or maybe I gave a talk and I had to say something, and I said, my first teacher could recognize people, but he couldn't acknowledge people.
Who was your first teacher?
Dick.
Richard Baker.
Yeah. And Norman has the capacity to acknowledge people. And I thought that, and I appreciated that deeply.
Well, did you go to Mexico with Norman? Is he still doing that?
Well, yeah, well, I think he's still doing that. Yeah, I went down to Mexico to, I won't remember her name's, that place. Yeah, it's quite beautiful, remarkable to sit with the Mexicans. They're so colorful and emotional and wonderful. Yeah, so loving.
You didn't, Rocio wasn't involved, was she?
No, Rocio was not involved. I don't believe she was involved with Norman at any time.
Yeah.
But I won't remember her name. It was a woman who actually owns. She's a medical doctor, and she's also owns somehow a property that's a resort type place north of Puerto Vallarta. Yeah. About an hour and a half, right on the coast. So it's actually in that state where all the drug shit is going on. Yeah.
Huh.
And she's done a lot of work for, what would I can say, taking care of the locals. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's really neat. How did you first come to practice? What was your first inkling of
my first inkling was of anything
that would lead you there?
I was quite young. I was kind of a weird teenager. And it was actually, this will sound maybe crazy to people, but it was actually football and sports that woke me up to what a guy named Merleau Ponte called the unified perceptual field. And in that space, I experienced a certain, how shall I say, awareness and freedom of expression and action that changed my life. And I decided I wanted to have a life that pursued that. And I read a bunch of stuff, like I was exposed to Allen Ginsberg and other Buddhist stuff early on, like Dwight Goddard and so on, as a teenager. And then when I went off to college
where were you living?
I was living on Long Island.
Yeah, is that where you come from?
Suburb. That's where I come from. Yeah, the South Shore of Long Island, in a town called West Islip, that I found out 40 years later, sometime like 2010 or whatever. I went to a class reunion, and people said that West Islip was known as White Islip. And yeah, it's true, but it wasn't, it was like Irish and Italian people who were escaping the city, who wanted to have this place that their kids could get educated and so on, and were willing to pay the taxes to have a good high school and library and all that stuff. But there were no black people, and there were few Jews. Yeah. Everybody else, but the other towns is where, and I didn't realize it was weird until literally I was being recruited for football, and I'd go around and I'd end up sharing a room with a black guy from Arkansas or something. And
you were being recruited by whom for what?
For football.
Yeah.
I was a good football player.
Recruited at what level? By whom?
Well, Penn State, North Carolina, Miami, and then the Ivy Leagues. And but I realized I was like, well, it's nice to be entertained this, but really I have no future here. I'm 5'11" and 220 pounds or 210 pounds. The running backs are bigger than me and faster. I said, and I won't get an education because I have to work 50 hours a week. So I changed horses, and I went to Harvard, and mostly I got in because of football, but I didn't have to play football there.
Yeah.
There was no scholarship. And then I just became what happened is I started studying anthropology, and then because I was really interested in liminal states, and trance states and so on, and that's where you could find out about that stuff, at least in that world then. And then I took a course in Asian studies, the second half, I can't remember, early on, either the first part of my sophomore year or the second half of my freshman year. And I fell in love with, I read a translation, it might have been Jan Polsky's translation of I think it was both the Diamond Sutra and the Fifth Patriarch's thing, or the Sixth, whoever.
Sixth
Patriarch's Platform Sutra. And I said, whoa, these are the first people I've ever experienced that are speaking my language. And then I reorganized college so that I could do an independent major that would allow me to study this stuff. And then by the end of the first semester doing that, I got all these approvals from dean people and so on. By the end of the first semester doing that, at the beginning of the second, my advisor and I realized I didn't want to do this academically. I actually wanted to do it. So I took some time off that I thought was going to be a year, but it turned into 12. And that's when I came to the Zen Center.
Why did you choose the Zen Center?
Well, I didn't exactly choose it. I stopped there with my idea of going to Japan. But when I talked to people and heard the horror stories, and I knew my difficulties with, I knew my difficulties with language, and I knew that down deep I didn't want to be tortured by these people.
That's right.
I said, I'm not up to that, you know. And then I just hit it off with people and felt I could do it there, and people supported me, were generous and warm.
Yeah, that San Francisco Zen Center, I should add.
Yeah. I arrived, a few months after Suzuki Roshi died, and everybody was in tears, and you were getting everybody to paint the rooms white or something.
Yeah.
And,
the city center. Yeah.
Yeah, the city center. Yeah. And it just felt comfortable, and it's comfortable in a way that was like, wow, I can do this here. And then actually I made a very strong contact with Dick.
Yeah.
For somebody my age at that time, he was quite appealing.
How old were you?
And I was like 20. And I was idealistic and all that stuff, and I was interested in Asian culture, and he talked a bit about it, like he knew what was going on, and he was quite affirming of me, and supportive of me in studying the things I studied and the ways I was going about it, which was a little odd because along with studying the Buddhist stuff, I was also studying Charles Olson poetry and Ezra Pound and all that stuff.
He was into that too.
Yeah, he was totally into that. So, it was weird things like I think at some point at Tassajara, I was his anjit. And I was reading Ezra Pound's poetry on my own. And the same day I was reading one of the canto poems, I go in to take care of his room, and sitting out on his desk is that same canto poem. Stuff like that, But he supported me, and how should I say? It's not so much like he supported me. He gave me license and affirmation to do what I was doing as I was doing it within the strictures of what was required, as long as I fulfilled what was required of me at Tassajara and at the Zen Center, and that was extremely wonderful for me.
Mm.
But I initially, you know, I made good friends. I was happy to be doing stuff, you know, whatever it was, whatever work we did, you know. And I knew I was only there because I wanted to go to this monastery and do this practice.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there like, oh, I've got to get laid, or, oh, I want to have a relationship with something. That was sort of peripheral, but I was just really focused on getting my ass to Tassajara to survive.
Mm.
That's my feeling was, you know, I guess I was deeply confused and trying to, I don't know what, figure shit out, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, Tassajara, the Zen Center gave me the space to literally, I'll call it come unglued, but it wasn't like I went nuts, you know? It was just like to let things be.
Yeah.
And that was very nourishing for me, up to a point. And then I realized at a certain point, many years later, you know, like, I can't mature here. I have to go someplace else.
Yeah.
But the other thing for me was meeting Philip Wayland. And, you know, there are two things I did, which was I decided, well, you know, which was, how shall I say, it's sort of OCD or something, or focused. But I said, well, Dick's the Zen teacher. I'm going to be a Zen student, and I'm going to learn from a Zen teacher. So I just focused on trying to develop a relationship with him, pretty much, and practice. And did that, and then other things emerged from that. But and then my relationship with Philip was, after a while, it was Dick and Philip that made it, in my experience, possible for my understanding of things to be able to be there at the Zen Center and survive, actually.
Mm.
Otherwise, I think I would have felt it was too not of imaginative enough or something. I don't know what, actually. You know, it's sort of years ago, but I remember once everything hit, you know, once everything sort of fell apart, that I realized, well, at some point I realized, well, this is a good place for people to come to train for a number of years. Exactly how many, I wasn't quite sure, but it also wasn't a place where necessarily one like me, at any rate, would spend one's life.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. But when I realized I don't know what to call it. The word that comes to mind is the exposure I was afforded by being at the San Francisco Zen Center in the 1970s. The exposure I was afforded to life and insight into what's going on in the world and the world of Buddhism and so on was it was an education that you couldn't, for me, that I would never have been able to access at Harvard.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It was just, to hang out, to have a little seminar with Masao Abe, to hang out with Michael McClure, to, all that stuff was just, whoa. Wonderful. And San Francisco was so great in the 70s. I mean, geez.
Yeah. One thing I remember is you and I were both involved in the very early 80s with Californians for a Nuclear Freeze. And you became the president of the San Francisco chapter or whatever?
Yeah. The San Francisco City and County, whatever, for bilateral nuclear weapons freeze. Yeah.
What county? What county?
It's San Francisco County and City. So the city,
oh,
the
I
county's
see.
larger than the city. I don't know what that's what the title was.
Oh,
Or
really?
the name of the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah. But well, and the other thing is I remember the World Suicide Club.
Aha, yes.
I
Yeah.
love that. It's great. I
Huh?
tell people about that, and they think, wow.
Yeah, I have it all up on. I think I have it on Cuke Annex now. But
Uh-huh.
if you Google it, you can go there and uh, World Suicide, and Freeze Please, and I wrote many other anti-nuclear songs. They're all available there.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you with the guitar, and I remember you singing, and it's wonderful.
huh.
And I remember going to a couple of places all dressed up and welcoming. The World Suicide Club welcomes so-and-so.
Yeah,
like
we
that.
welcomed Casper Weinberger
Weinberger,
and
yeah.
cheered him on.
All those criminals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm in charge. Alexander Haig, yeah.
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 That was really powerful stuff. It actually affected when I left the Zen Center to return, and I returned to Harvard. I decided I would study international relations and U.S.-Soviet stuff. As a result of the bilateral nuclear weapons freeze, I got involved in some U.S.-Soviet stuff, talking with David Harris.
Oh, yeah.
And these are the weird things. When Dick's weirdness started coming out, he was like, he didn't like the idea that I was talking with David Harris.
Oh, yeah, because that was part of his
show,
salon.
Yeah. And I would, just because I had that position, right, the president of the blah, 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 I'd be invited to these events, and there I'd be, and there Dick be. and he would act like he didn't know who I was.
Uh-huh.
It's quite funny.
Yeah.
At any rate,
Yeah.
And that sounds like, I should be pissed off or something, but I'm not at all. It was actually quite a teaching. Yeah. Yeah, quite amazing. I mean, it could have, obviously it could be some other way, but it wasn't. So, and that's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I remember is you were one of the people that he sent, Zen Center sent, to be with Nancy Wilson Ross on the East Coast. And my memory is there were a number of people who did that. I think of you as maybe the person who got along best with her, or one of the people who got along best with her.
Yeah.
Is that right?
No, this is very true. No, that's totally true. Nancy and I basically fell in love with one another. It wasn't like it was easy. But somehow, all of her imperiousness and that type of stuff didn't faze me so much. It was just like, wait, there's some really good stuff here. There's stuff to learn about life for me. Mm-hmm. She used to treat me in many ways like an equal. So my first trip out there was to work at her summer place, and Linda Ruth was there. And my job basically was just to, clear brush and creosote the house.
Oh, my God, that's terrible.
Oh, it's horrible. I was soaked in creosote.
That's terrible. It's bad stuff,
it was like
man.
Poison City. Yeah. But in the middle of the North Woods, your house is going to rot. So anyway, so I did that. But and then we'd sit down for a formal dinner and so on, and we'd have what I would call somewhat intellectual conversations, literary and so on. And sometimes Nancy and I would get into it and have an argument about something, who knows what. And I didn't back down. It wasn't like I'm, I don't know, not shy or something, but on certain points I wouldn't back down. And Nancy respected that I was like most of the Zen students didn't stand up for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And on certain issues that I knew about, I said, well, that's not true. It goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd have it out. But doing that really earned her respect.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And she literally placed me in a different category, I think, based on that. And she was the first person I met in my whole life, how shall I say, that recognized my intelligence and demanded it of me.
Mm. Mm.
Every place else I could just float by.
And of course, she was extremely well connected. As I recall, you flew in a jet to somewhere like Florida or the Bahamas or something, and you were with the guy who was head of the CIA or had been, and you went to the jet was owned by the Mellons, and one of the richest families in the old, East Coast aristocracy. And there was a painting on the plane like a Matisse or something. What was that?
Yeah, there was a Picasso and a Braque.
On the plane.
On the plane. And they picked me up at Butler Aviation at LaGuardia Airport, the private section of the airport, in the jet. And we flew down to Upperville, Virginia, where he had a jet strip right on his property. And then I met Nancy and him and his wife and a guy named Jack
wait a minute,
Barrett.
Who's him?
Him, Paul Mellon.
Oh, all right.
And we flew down all together to Antigua.
Ah.
Antigua in the Caribbean, not Antigua, Guatemala. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they just had this stunning place there. And Nancy was invited to be there, and she brought me along, and we stayed for a good 2 weeks.
Really?
We had dinner with the Mellons. Yeah, we had dinner with the Mellons every night and breakfast and a view of the Caribbean from our rooms. And it was stunning. And of course, that's where Dick Helms showed up.
Yeah, that's it. I knew it was Richard. I was going Richard. Helms.
And he had just come back from, he had been the ambassador to Iran.
Oh.
When the revolution happened.
Oh, and he didn't become a hostage. He got out of there.
He got out of there. It sounds like he's the ambassador, but really he's CIA, right? So.
Right.
So at any rate, and it was clear to me when I met him what a fucking psychopath he was. Yeah.
Oh, Helms?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
His eyes were like, how could you tell? I didn't exist in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I could just feel that. And it was just like, whoa. But, the Mellons and the Scapes, who are Mellons, were heavily invested in and supportive of private CIA businesses around the world.
Yeah.
So all that was connected, but this was quite a learning experience because I got to hang out with Paul Mellon's what will we describe him? Art curator. I advised him on what to purchase and created his collection. A guy named John Basket, who was just an Englishman, just incredible, wonderful man. Yeah, he was and relatively young. He was in his 40s. I remember that. But with Nancy, like Rick Levine and I have had conversation, and Rick said when he told his mother what he was doing, supporting Nancy and Stanley at the time. Rick, I think, was there when Stanley was dying.
When Stanley was dying, Dick was at Tassajara, and I was his Jisha.
No, but Rick Levine was though in Old Westbury with them.
Oh, I see. I was with Dick in the office when he was talking to
Nancy.
Nancy's husband, Stanley?
Yeah, Stanley Young.
Yeah, when they were talking, I mean, he was talking to him as he was dying, and I was there with him. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I was at Tassajara then.
Oh.
But
I was at Green Gulch, actually. I was just his, he called me MJ, Main Jisha.
There you go.
So he had brought me down with him.
Okay. I got you. Yeah, I'm thinking this was 74?
73. If it was 74, it would have been when I was head monk there, Shuso.
Yeah, I remember that.
So it could have been then, too.
Yeah. But I was at Tassajara when that happened, but I didn't know much about it.
Yeah.
But and I loved my experience at Tassajara was so very profound, deep, and wonderful for me.
Mm.
And then I was asked to leave and go farm.
Oh, you went to Green Gulch.
Yeah. And I was like a 23-year-old guy with nothing, and no way to get out of Green Gulch on weekends or anything like that. And I was working with horses, which I'd never done in my life. I'm just a kid from suburbia, right?
Was Steve Stuckey was working with them too, though, right?
No. Steve had not come into his own yet there. I had taken over from Tony Patchell, who was in deep depression with a bad back and whatever the hell else was going on at Green Gulch at the time, which there was quite a bit going on. Much of which I don't know about, but Tony became deeply disaffected, and he wasn't up to, shall we say, transferring knowledge. So I just learned how to put the stuff on the horses and got dragged around.
Yeah,
make a very good show for themselves.
Yeah,
but my time at Green Gulch became a true catalyst. It was maybe the most horrible time of my life.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Steve and I didn't get along. I mean, it's
Wait a
not
minute.
like
Who and you?
Steve Stuckey, who was the head of the fields, and I didn't exactly get along, but it wasn't like we were arguing or something. It was just, we didn't connect in any way. And I think Reb was the head of practice, and I never connected with Reb.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I just felt totally alone. Yeah.
Huh.
And, there were crazy women, and everybody else was married or having affairs. And,
wait, what year is this?
It's when Evelyn Lentz was living there. And
Evelyn Lentz was living there? Oh,
yeah.
Wow, I forgot that. Wow.
Yeah, and Kathy Cook, and it was just really weird.
Oh, wow. Evelyn Lentz, man, there's it. I can tell you stuff about that. She goes way back.
I'll bet.
All right. Well, pardon me. That I'd forgotten she stuck around that long. God.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really interesting. Oh, so that was probably like 75?
76, something like that. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, and I was at Tassar at 75. All
So it
right.
must have been 76, 70. Yeah, I was 70. Might have been the fall of 76, something like that, or the whatever. Anyway, somewhere in the middle there. And I made friends with Harry Roberts. He seemed to get all the rejects, so to speak.
Yeah,
And
wonderful.
yeah. So hanging out with Harry was really good for me, and that was very powerful. But and it was at Green Gulch that actually the opportunity to be with Nancy emerged.
Oh,
Because I described my distaste for Green Gulch to Dick, and the next thing I knew, I was offered to that summer to head out to the Adirondacks and be at her place and do that.
yeah, and well, you were a perfect choice. I mean, I was, about that time I had started living in Bolinas half time, and
Yeah, I remember.
and I was around Green Gulch, down at Muir Beach too.
Yeah.
But you had several things going for you, which made you appealing in Dick's eyes. And one is you'd gone to Harvard like him. He always was, what would you say, gave Harvard people preferential treatment.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of funny. And there were a number of us there, like
I
Lou
know.
and Peter and others. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but the other thing is you had East Coast manners. And so you were perfect for going to Nancy, who's, Nancy and I related with her some, and we got along, but she was sort of like, all right, David, that's enough. She could only take so much. But you meshed with her. And Paul Disco said something once. He said, Dick has like a magical psychic ability to size people up and know what they're good at, know what would work with them. And I saw him do that. I saw people come to Tassajara when we had just started, and he'd immediately ask them to stay. I mean, and other people he wouldn't be interested in. It was like Paul Disco, Nils Holm. He already knew Dan Welsh, but very quick. Nils told me that like Dick, the first day he met Dick, Dick told him he should stay and become a priest.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, go on.
Yeah. Well, I felt that connection with Dick.
Yeah.
I would say, for a young kid, it was like, wow, this is Zen. We're actually like communicating in this world, this space,
Yeah.
And that was utterly charming to me, and helpful, because it actually gave me a space to affirm. And at any rate, let's go back to Nancy, and we'll get on to Dick at some point. But I agree. But that capacity, really, that ability, or really lended to his confusion as well. But at any rate, so there I am at Green Gulch. I say that to Dick. Dick says, "Okay, at some point we, in the typical Dokusan thing, you're going to blah blah blah." So I go there, and first I'm there for the summer, and Nancy and I get along, and Linda Ruth is Linda Ruth being nice, Girl Scouty, and so on, and Nancy and I felt like we were having real conversations,
Mm-hmm.
And it was wonderful, and she appreciated the stuff I was doing and my thinking and all that, and that was very helpful. But she actually was the first person, as I said, who recognized whatever intelligence there is there and demanded it of me, and no one else up to that point had done that. That was a new world for me. That was also another nature of affirming. She didn't feel it wasn't like a competition, but as a result, I got to, let alone that I flew down to Paul Mellon's joint and other things. I was given a tour with Nancy of at a special time in the Museum of Modern Art of, I can't remember whether it was Monet or Matisse show by Mrs. Rockefeller. I could remember her first name, but
wait a minute.
Nancy and she were,
which one?
Yeah, she was the president of MoMA at the time.
Maybe she was David Rockefeller Sr.'s wife.
She might be either David's or John's. Nancy was very close with John, but not with David. John was the older brother of David.
Oh, you mean David, the younger Rockefeller?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I showed him around. I showed him and his wife around Kyoto.
Oh, far out.
Yeah, they were great. Yeah. I really liked them.
Oh, good. He was Chase Bank.
Well, he was involved with educational foundations around the world. That's all I heard about. I didn't hear anything about the business.
Yeah, no, I got you. Nancy was on the board of some of their foundations.
Mm-hmm.
But she was also on the board of the Asia Society and the Japan Society.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I got to meet those people. I got invited to places like dinner at Mary Burke's, and
I don't know who that is.
Mary Burke. Mary and Jackson Burke have the largest, they're dead now, largest collection of 17th century Japanese art. She was on the board of the Museum of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and hideously well connected. Her husband. She was. I always forget these guys' names. The Dulles. She was part of the Dulles family.
Oh, Dulles. John Foster Dulles family.
Dulles, and yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, John, why don't you explain who Nancy is?
Why don't I explain who Nancy is? I of course, this is only my view, but
well, why would what did she do that made her?
Why these people? She was like, this will sound strange. She was like a priest to these people, not in the sense of that she did rituals or shit, but they felt that they could trust her and be her friend, and she didn't want anything from them.
Yeah, but Nancy was a writer who wrote about Buddhism.
Oh, yeah. She started writing about novels, right? About people and high society, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of 19th centuryist novels in the 20th century that were picked up by whatever Book of the Month Club and stuff like that. And she studied, she was a student of life from the perspective of the social register in New York and stuff. Mm-hmm. So she was quite aware of all this.
Mm-hmm.
And she was always, she was the first woman to graduate from the University of Oregon in like 1918 or 19 or something like that.
Yeah, she was from Washington, right?
Yeah, I think she grew up in Tacoma.
Mm-hmm.
In Tacoma, she she met and was great friends with Mark Tobey. She went the Nellie Cornish School, was a big deal, which was this private art school. And she met Merce Cunningham and John Cage there. She met Mark Tobey and all this. And she came back east. You know, Nancy was ambitious.
Yeah. Well, it paid off.
Yeah. No, she was tremendously ambitious. And she was also very attractive and very intelligent.
Hey, I just got her on Wikipedia. All right, her first book was 1932, and there's a series of books. Here's Westward the Women, 1944.
Yeah, which was turned into a movie. Yeah.
Oh, really? Really? The Left Hand is the Dreamer. That's a cool title. Joan of Arc.
Yep.
You know, Mark Twain was into Joan of Arc. That's very interesting. And then starting in 1960, Heroines of the Early West. Oh, no, that's not. All right, here we are. 1960, The World of Zen, an East-West anthology. 1966, Three Ways of Asian Wisdom, and 1980, Buddhism, A Way of Life and Thought.
Yeah, so I worked with her on that book.
Oh, goodness.
We literally we would read every day she would write, or try to write, and we would read aloud what she was writing, and back and forth, and we would talk over it, and she would rearrange it, and then we'd read it again. And her style of writing was that it had to be read aloudable. You could feel it, rather than think it, you know?
That's good.
And that the thinking, it's tremendous. So we would go over and over it. She was tremendously focused and disciplined, but her energies were flagging by then. Yeah, but she that book was very hard for her to write. And Dick's feeling was that she was reaching areas where she didn't have the language for the experience.
Well, good. She was reaching.
Yeah, no, totally.
She was born in 1901.
I know.
Gee, she aged very well. I remember her in 1979 at Greens when I was the maitre d'. She was doing good, man.
No, she was a hot babe.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And that's the truth. And she used to say things to me, you know, you think when you get old that your sexual drive disappears, but it doesn't.
Good for her.
Yeah, exactly.
Good for her. Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah. Down, boy.
Right. And also, what I really can see how older men become, you know, just the slightest positive message from a younger female, they'll start thinking, she and I could be together and she likes me or something. It's really, it's just ripe for deluding oneself of how attractive one is and everything.
Totally. Yeah, it's quite, you know, what a world, huh?
Yeah.
The human mind is just, well, I could say the male human mind is just a dick, but, but that's not exactly true. But it's a large portion of what has to be dealt with. Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, it's has kept the species going.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And to you know, I don't know. Have you ever heard of this Japanese guy, Shinichi Hisamatsu, who was a Zen teacher, a Rinzai Zen teacher, lay guy who was also a tea teacher and a and academic at the University of Tokyo. He died in about 84.
Mm-hmm.
Remarkable guy. They gave him a special compound within the larger compound of Myoshinji. He had a small place, and he would do sesshin. So I've been sharing this book with a number of people called The Critical Sermons on Zen, which are from the record of Linji. In the last sesshin he led in his 80s when he was sick and dying. And I forget what I was going to say, but he's just a remarkable guy. What was that? Oh, yeah. He's talking about, in this last piece that I was sharing in the Dharma talk tonight, he's talking about not picking and choosing. He's also saying that don't make the passions bad. The passions are your awakening.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Man,
totally.
They're telling, when I feel that they're telling me I'm alive, and they can be experienced and expressed in different ways.
Yeah. So when it's like this is I think for people in Zen, it had been and maybe continues to be from certain angry women in the Zen world a problem, but guys, there are ways to include the feelings of sexuality and passion with someone without screwing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to try to not acknowledge it or not include it in your feeling and being with someone is like it perverts things.
Yeah, I agree. That's good.
And it's just really important. Otherwise, the other thing is women don't trust you then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they know there's something going on here.
Yeah. I had a friend here, my best friend actually, who died. Young guy. He wasn't even 40 yet. And he had a beautiful, beautiful Indonesian partner, which you don't do here much. But anyway, they did. And very soon after he died, a mutual friend who's been here a long time, who's like my age, and who's married into Balinese royalty like 35 years ago, 40 years ago. He asked her if she'd be his second wife.
Whoa.
And freaked her out, man. And it really made everybody very uncomfortable. I don't think it should have. She didn't have to be freaked out. She could have said, oh, well, that's very flattering, but no, thank you.
Yeah, I've got other things to do. Yeah, well, these are the freaky things, It's quite fascinating for me on the level of just working with these young women who are, somewhere between 17 and 25, and cultivating relationships and developing counseling them, shall we say, trying to find ways to help them open up their own experience. But there's one can't, institutionally they're really sort of crazy about this, but you can't just exclude feelings, and you can't exclude that reality that there's these connections or these feelings amongst people. There's simply that energy, and to pretend that there isn't is detrimental to maturation. And understanding. It's just horrible. So it's quite wonderful. I'm so deeply nourished by these young women that it's really very helpful for me.
Yeah.
And I think helpful for them. I'm sure it is. But so this is just very important stuff. Anyway, Nancy grew up in a world of they would read poetry and memorize poetry and read it aloud in the family, in the drawing room by the fireplace type thing.
Oh.
So she was part of I think I won't remember the name of the family, but it was one of those Washington families that goes back to New England type thing. So when she moved east, she had a great aunt in Auburn, New York, which is upstate New York, just a little west of Syracuse, who was a landed gentry type group, or maybe they had money through manufacture of some form that was happening in upstate New York in the 19th century. Enough certainly to have servants and things like that. And that was like her finishing school. And then she went down to New York and she met this guy named Charles Ross, who happened to be the roommate of Paul Mellon at Yale.
Oh.
And she married Charles Ross.
Oh.
And through that process became friends with Paul Mellon and Paul Mellon's wife, second wife, I think, a woman named Kathy Mellon is how she's known. But over the years, Nancy remained friends. She divorced Charles, remained friends with Paul, and married Stanley. And at one point, Nancy was seminal in getting the Bollingen Foundation organized and the publishing of the works of Carl Jung.
Oh, goodness. Huh.
She got Paul Mellon and Kathy to go through Jungian analysis with Carl Jung.
Wow. I think the Mellon family was one of those that Smedley Butler, you know who that is?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I know.
That Smedley Butler said wanted to fund him to overthrow Roosevelt. They wanted him just to take an army right in, take over from Roosevelt. And because he was the most highly decorated general, and it was just, and he ratted on him. And then nobody would believe him.
I know. I've read all this crap. It's just stunning that stunning isn't even the word. It's just criminal what doesn't occur in the history of the United States, huh?
Yeah, no kidding. It's one continuous crime.
It's one continuous crime from the beginning. It's just this is samsara. Hey? It's never been any different. It doesn't have to be this way, but it's never been any different.
Yeah. It's quite a mix of really great stuff and really awful stuff.
Really horrible shit sometimes. Yeah, what was I thinking about Smedley? And what's his name? The airplane guy who flew to Europe.
Charles Lindbergh. Yeah.
Charles Lindbergh was part of that group.
That's right. Yeah.
It's just like crazy.
Yeah, Lindbergh sort of ruined his reputation.
Lindbergh was a hero. Lindbergh was a hero of Dick's when Dick was a young guy.
That's right. Yeah.
But I don't know that Dick would have known this, but, what do I know? Yeah.
But also Anne Morrow Lindbergh was a woman who knew Nancy and who practiced Zazen some and was involved with, I forget their names, these East Coast women that Yvonne knew and that.
Well, Mary Farkas, the First Zen Institute.
Right. There you go.
Nancy used to sit Zazen in the 30s with Sokean.
Oh, wow. Sasaki. Sokean, isn't he Ruth Fuller Sasaki's?
He might be Ruth Fuller Sasaki's husband. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So she knew Ruth, but she knew Sokean, and that's where Margot Wilkie and other people get pulled into the what's his name, Edo operation.
Right, right. And but I just want to say that Soke-an founded, in the 30s, the first Zen Institute. I'm not sure it was called that at
Yeah,
the time in New York City.
yeah,
And that is really
yeah,
the first really established Zen thing in America.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he was like, I used to read. They had I forget what was it called, their newsletter.
Um, I've
It
got
was
the
available
one. I've got the one with the obituary for Suzuki, the memorial article for Suzuki. I've got it on Cuke.com. The book was Zen Dust. That
I know. Oh, I know Zen Dust. Yeah,
that's a great
it's
book.
quite. Oh, I fully agree. I had some wonderful epiphanies reading that book and connecting it, of all things, to Trungpa Rinpoche and his teachings regarding Shambhala. It was quite powerful because the formality of Zen Dust and the formality of the telling of the Zen stories is so different in my mind from the Blue Cliff Record or from the Book of Serenity, the way the koans are presented and so on. And there was some real resonance with the forms and the ways that the Trungpa Rinpoche categorized some of what I'll call the different spaces of mind in the Shambhala practice. You know, it's a funny thing. I say this to people, and it's I say that Zen gave me Shambhala, and Shambhala gave me Zen. And what I mean by that, I mean, that sounds, weird, right? But most of the people who practice with Trungpa Rinpoche couldn't fucking sit still. And most of their practice was either intellectual or passionate.
Right. Trungpa asked me to come lead meditation at seminars.
Yeah.
And, I would visit, but I didn't want to be part of it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
But I think I felt, I just felt it was too wild for me. But I was a young guy. But later, as I penetrated his teachings and read them thoroughly, I began to see this resonance of Zen throughout it. But there was something about being able to sit still and do zazen in relationship with doing these things called the sadhanas and the visualizations that made the visualizations a non-intellectual activity. Whereas most of the people who practiced them from the Shambhala world, because they couldn't sit still, it was all a sort of cognitive, intellectual imagination. On the other level, Zen is something more than bowing to and from your cushion, or knowing how to walk. It's literally being present with all the details of just your and my experience of wherever we are. And Trungpa was awake to that.
Yeah.
And that brought me alive, and that connected those two for me tremendously.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But I had, as a result of David, I got initiated into that whole thing. And while I was also practicing with Norman to develop do the transmission piece, and I was actually on the board. I was actually co-chair of the board of directors of the Boston Shambhala Center.
Of what? Boston Shambhala training? Really?
Boston Shambhala Center. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
But even there, I was somewhat of a weirdo, But and the older people, the old, what did they call them? Old dogs, didn't so much trust me, but the younger ones did. But at a certain point, I realized that that the way this guy, the Sakyong, was running things, that nobody had any freedom of expression with regard to the Dharma, and that this was crippling people. So I said, I'm not signing up for this. So now I wander around with this transmission thing and just, practicing and saying what I say and do what I do with people. At any rate, back to Nancy. So in the 30s, she's aware of this and doing it. And she's also highly connected with, what are those people called? The Whitneys.
Who?
Whitney, the Whitney family.
Rich. I don't know.
Her house. Well, the Whitneys were at one point. The woman who married this guy Elmhurst, and I forget her name, but I can easily find it. Was the richest woman in the world in the 20s, and she was a Whitney inheritor. Nancy lived in the gatehouse on the Whitney estate.
Oh,
and the Whitney estate was Apple Green. That's where they lived, but they sold it. They sold their properties there and moved to Kentucky so they could be with their horses and get away from Jews. Because the Jews were buying up all of the high-end real estate around town and making it, something. And that really pissed them off, and they wanted to get out of town. So
wow, mistake.
That was in the 50s that they moved, but it also got Nancy's book, Westward the Women, made into a movie because Sonny Whitney at some point was into producing movies.
How did it do?
I don't know how well it did. I think it was just, a typical Western of the 50s type thing. It wasn't a John Ford production, but,
Yeah, what was it called?
I think it was still called Westward the Women, but I'm not sure.
Westward the Women. All right, let's see.
And it was about the centrality of women to bringing culture and life and supporting families and stuff in the West. Yeah. At any rate, this Elmhurst, this woman who became Elmhurst, created Dartington Hall.
Wait a minute. Let me comment on Westward the Women.
Yeah, sure.
We have the 1951 movie, and we have the 2021 TV series.
I love it. It was definitely the 1951 movie.
It's called Larry Karaszewski on Westward the Women.
These are things I'm aware of, but they're researchable to fill in the...
Westward the Women has a 7.6 IMDb rating. That's very good.
Yeah.
Robert Taylor, Denise Darcell, Hope Emerson, John McIntyre. Very good.
So she used to know all these people.
Yeah.
Like Robert Taylor and stuff. She used to know Charles Lawton. She used to know all these people. And her husband was a Broadway play producer, Stanley Young.
Oh. Huh.
And he was partners with Roger Stevens, who became in the Kennedy administration the head of it couldn't be the Kennedy administration, the Johnson administration, the Kennedy Center. Roger Stevens, who sometime early in his career, in the late 50s or early 60s, owned the Empire State Building.
Wow.
And I remember him saying to me his favorite people to compete with in business were Harvard MBAs.
Huh. My goodness. Hey, how long were you?
They were so predictable.
Pardon me?
Because they were so predictable, he said. Yeah.
Oh, ha.
Yeah.
That's good. How long were you with Nancy there?
It's I really have to think about that. It was 3 years, but even after I left the Zen Center, I would visit regularly up to her death.
Wow, you were there 3 years?
Yeah. Yeah, no, people at the Zen Center were getting nervous.
Ha! That is something. Wow. Did you go back to the Zen Center after that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I came back and I worked that's when I was on off and on for 3 years. It wasn't like 1 3 year block.
Oh, I
But
see.
yeah, I came back and that's when I think I became Dick's assistant for a while,
Yeah.
working with Pat Phelan
Mm.
and then the Dutch girl.
Oh, I know who you mean.
Yeah.
She's been very generous with Cuke Archives.
Oh,
Her name starts with A. I
Adine.
Adine.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's there in Holland right now. And
Exactly. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So um, it was really when I was Dick's assistant that things started to come off the tracks in relationship to him. But
In relationship to what?
to Dick, yeah, my relationship with Dick began to come off the tracks. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Go
Yeah.
on.
Well, yeah, it's just um, he was totally controlling and manipulating, and would always blame me for things that I had no idea were going on.
Uh-huh.
So I sort of like, this is really weird. It's like, and people like what's his name, Ed Sadazan would come up to me and say, God, it's hard enough to do your job, but when you're white rafting down a river and somebody's throwing boulders from the cliffs above, but it was, he would just like, it would be crazy. Yeah.
Hmm.
At any rate, at a certain point, it just became like, this is really stupid. You don't want to do this work, and you're blaming me for it not getting done.
Huh.
But in certain situations, yeah.
Well, did you state that or think that?
In some, I more thought it, and
Yeah.
then I expressed it in just my demeanor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it became unworkable.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I didn't feel there was a space where I could, but that was me then, so on.
So what happened?
So what happened is I was no longer an assistant and I was working in other places. And then I started doing this stuff like, I think I worked in the treasury, and then I started doing the nuclear stuff and that type of thing. And I moved to an apartment up the street at 364 or something. And then people started getting nervous that I was doing too much stuff outside Zen Center, and they offered me the job at the city, but I'd have to move back into the Zen Center. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do the job. So I moved back in and did that for a while. And yeah, so I did the job, and that's when the latter part of that is when people began, when the whole Thich Nhat Hanh thing and stuff like that.
Wait a minute. The whole Thich Nhat Hanh thing, what does that mean?
Well, not Thich Nhat Hanh. When the whole the Mrs. Hawkins thing, I can't remember her name, blew up.
Oh, yeah.
And it had to do with that Thich Nhat Hanh retreat.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that at Tassajara.
Yeah. So by then I was like, I knew so much about Dick that other people didn't know.
Yeah.
That it was very untenable for me to be with him and with them in some way.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how for example, Lucy felt. But, it was just really weird. But I also, in the strangest way, too, I felt totally compassionate to him. I had some understanding of the complexity of his mind. It's like, geez. But he didn't want to have any. He wanted to pretend that I I'm making that up. I don't know what he wanted, but it seemed like he wasn't happy with me being that familiar with other aspects of his life.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And for me, it didn't bother me that much, but it bothered me that he wanted me to. He had some idea that he could tell me what to do about my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, okay.
And
oh, okay. So what happened is when I saw that, and what blew my mind is when I saw him playing with her kids, and you can just feel somebody's body, and I was like, holy shit, I don't believe it. And
playing with what?
Playing at Pasahara, I was at that retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh and other people. And at a certain point, Dick was just openly, incredibly affectionate with her kids, swinging them around and being with her, and you're being nearby. And I just
Whose
said,
kids?
Mrs. Hawkins.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. They're having an affair. This is unbelievable. And he is like just out there.
You know how long that affair lasted?
No, I don't.
That weekend.
No. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Yeah.
That was it.
I love it.
And it was the poor guy. She was the face that sank his ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's so horrible.
Yeah. Well, no. I don't.
Yeah.
That's
well, I mean,
he's doing great, and he and Lucy are close. He and Anna are close.
Wonderful.
He had a midlife crisis, you could say, and but he came back from it.
Good. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. My experience of, I say this to people and they look at me. My experience of Dick was he was one of the best things that happened in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Curious.
Where would I be? Where would so many of us be without him?
Yeah,
he made it all possible.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I say this to this day, and there are people who are wandering around the Zen Center now who are still like they're angry. It's kind of weird.
Huh.
People who actually, too, who are new to the place, who've never even met the guy and have no idea.
Yeah. Well, that happens to founders.
I know.
That founders frequently get kicked out, and then other people who they're like the bureaucracy takes over, or another group takes over, or something. So he created a strong organization that was sort of like his. It was the what I call the imperial period, and it wanted democracy and other things, and so it changed.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's they're as I just said, I didn't say this, but as I said, I love the guy. But at the same time, at a certain point in our relationship, it was like talking to a dotty old uncle. Everything would go around in circles. And there would never be any traction about support of me doing other things. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is not helpful.
Yeah.
And that's when I began doing other things.
Right. So what did you do?
Well, that's what the nuclear stuff was, and things of that nature outside. And that's when I began making plans. So if I remember correctly, and I may be off, but I was Eno, and I had to sort of argue with him so that I could come down to this Thich Nhat Hanh retreat. Because I was friends with Nelson Foster at that time, and I was friends with Bob Aiken and the Buddhist Peace Fellowship thing, which was nascent, and I wanted to be there. And I knew Andrew Cooper, so I was like, these are my buds.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm about, nuclear shit, Russian shit, so on. And so I prevailed, and I was able to go there, and he didn't particularly like it, as I remember. But, I don't think it was a big thing, but it was just, for me it was, because you're standing up to this person at that time, for me.
Yeah.
But so I went, and then everything unfolded, and I had already planned to leave the Zen Center. And what happened is I ended up, but I decided to stay for another year or so to help in any way that I could.
With the transition.
The transition, when I got back to the city, and, in Chosun, I'm there having conversations, and they were like, it's like they didn't know who Dick Baker was.
Yeah, that's how I experienced it. I was sort of like, well, what's new?
Yeah, exactly. Where have you people been? What's going on here?
Right. A lot of blinders.
Yeah. Yeah, I capture that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go on.
And yeah. So then I stayed for a year, I think a year, or so, beyond what I had planned, and then I left. I want to say in '84 to return to Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
It was something I felt I needed to complete. And so I left and did that. And that was an amazing entertainment. It was, I don't know, but that's where I went after that. And also for me, I felt like, God, here I am 30, whatever years old I was, 34 years old. And I grew up in New York. I went to Harvard for a while. I've been at the San Francisco Zen Center. I don't even know how to make a living. What's making a living about? What do people actually suffer about? What do they worry about? What's all this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
So I felt I had to be exposed to that in some way. And I had to assure myself that actually I wasn't hiding by being at the Zen Center, that I could actually make a living and be in the world, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I went about organizing that, and did okay.
What did you do?
I studied there. It's interesting. For me, it's interesting. I studied international relations for a moment, and then I realized that these people don't want to, how shall I say, have peace with the Russians. They're making too much money and too many careers. And I switched to international political economy and studied development, what they called development at that time. Mm-hmm. And I found this wonderful professor a guy named John Montgomery, who was actually the first, the Soka Gakkai gave a ton of money to Harvard to create a World Peace Chair at the Kennedy Business School.
Yeah.
And John Montgomery was the first chair, the first person to be in the chair.
Wow.
And he was my advisor. Yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting.
He was a wonderful man. Yeah, he was a wonderful man. And I had marched with Soka Gakkai, banging drums and so on.
Wow.
So it was fun.
That is something.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and people forget that sometimes about them because the Nichiren Shoshu,
I know.
Which they're split from them now, aren't they?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. It's, it's a rather fanatical, maybe the most fanatical branch of Buddhism.
the fundamental evangelists of Buddhism. Yeah.
That's right.
Do you know that Tina Turner and the piano player, the black Herbie Hancock,
A lot of
is a Buddhist, Nichiren.
yeah. Well, Nichiren Shoshu, because Nichiren
Nichiren Shoshu
is more in the fold.
Well, he chants Namu, whatever. Yeah.
Whenever I hear an African American entertainer or athlete is a Buddhist, every time I find it's Nichiren Shoshu. It's very interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. They so even at like Wellesley, the black kids, when they do it, they're not doing it now. But when I first arrived, there was a group of them who would get together and chant.
Namyo Renge Kyo.
They just loved chanting.
Yeah.
And they were somewhat fanatical about it, of course. But yeah, so it's quite appealing to people, to black people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there I was, and did that, and I was with Carol Rankin at that time, and she was dying.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I was taking care of her. I was with her. We were living in an apartment. I was, doing my thesis at Harvard. It was really kind of weird, and I was also so strange. We were staying at the Cambridge Buddhist Association. Then at a certain point, they kicked Carol out while she was sick and dying, and I was like, I said, I'll never have anything to do with a Buddhist Sangha again.
You mean Nancy? You mean Elsie Mitchell's group?
Yeah, Elsie Mitchell's. The board made a decision. Maureen was going to ordain Carol. And
who was?
The board,
who was going to ordain?
Maureen. I forget her last name.
Maureen Stewart.
Stewart was going to ordain Carol, and they were very close. And then one day, Maureen came in stricken and said, "You have to leave." And she didn't stand up, or she may have tried to stand up to Elsie, but it didn't work.
Was Elsie really involved? I mean, Elsie used to tell me that, the board was running it. And
yeah. Well, then I don't know who the board was, because at some point, I don't even know who the board was. And it might have been, what was her name? Sheila, French name. Her father was a scholar.
Yeah.
Anyway, I won't remember.
Yeah, I don't think Elsie was necessarily involved.
Yeah.
She was earlier, but
I see.
That was later on.
You may know a lot more than I do.
No, I don't. But I visited Elsie there. I have extensive stuff about her, like 40 pages on Cuke.com. And
I love it.
And when I was there, I saw you when I went there about something. Well, actually, Nancy's brother, the head of Fidelity, asked to see me.
Elsie's brother. Yeah.
He did. Ned Johnson. So I went and met with him for 2 hours.
Wow.
They picked me up in a limousine at the airport. And he once was asked what he's reading by, a business magazine. And he said, I'm reading a book called Thank You and Okay, An American Zen Failure in Japan. But you know what else he said? Elsie said, he's completely dyslexic. He can't read. But anyway,
I love it.
That was very nice.
Well, he was a man of his word, as I understand it, in supporting the Zen Center and setting them up, even when, at the point too, when he decided it was not going to happen any longer. Yeah.
What do you mean?
I think, if I remember correctly, and this might be 10 years or so ago, he set the Zen Center up with some dough again and said goodbyes. But, yeah.
Well, they were he and Anne-Marie Soulier, they were very supportive of the Zen Center for a long time.
Yeah.
Of course, his father was, and
Yeah, I
but it was sort of secret. It was family fund. It wasn't.
Oh no,
It
no, I
wasn't
understand. It wasn't public.
Fidelity
Yeah.
Foundation.
Yeah. Sure, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, but they were, good Lord, they go way back. They were even involved with giving money for Tassajara.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember some stories about Suzuki Roshi visiting there and Dick visiting with him. Yeah.
oh, Ned's father, Ed Johnson, who really made Fidelity,
Yeah.
he was just totally enamored with Suzuki Roshi, but he also liked Dick a lot. And
No, that's what I understand. And I remember Dick implying that he might take a job there or something.
Well, he went and spent 6 weeks there as their guest, and he took he left Japan while he was living in Japan, and just one day he showed up at Zen Center, like in 1970, and Suzuki Roshi didn't know what he was doing there, and he just said hello and said he was going to spend some time with, as Fidelity's guest on the East Coast, and he went there, and he told me he spent most of his time just going around talking to people about how the war in Vietnam was wrong and shit in and stuff like that. That was always anti-war was always very big to him.
I know, and anti-nuclear as well.
Anti-nuclear. Mainly anti-nuclear weapons. Wanting to freeze nuclear weapons, having sensible nuclear weapons policy instead of an insane suicidal one. He was very supportive of that.
So, he was supportive of me when most of the Zen community was not, at least openly, I don't know the most of the Zen community, but the
hierarchy?
Certain people. The hierarchy wasn't so supportive of me taking people out to go sit zazen in front of the nuclear company Foremost or Bechtel or at the gates of Livermore or things like that, which I used to do. And Dick was very supportive of that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, he did that earlier, that sort of thing earlier in the early 60s. Green Gulch was sending a group to go have silent meditation in Mill Valley once a week. And there was a lot of support from the Zen Center in time. It was just, it
took a while. Yeah, it's totally cool, and I understand. I mean, it just, everything takes longer than some of us would like.
Yeah.
But that's okay. That's the way it is, It's
the
same thing that, in a sense, what happened to me in business is I really focused on something which was, well, first of all, I got this degree and then I didn't have any money, any job, something like that. But, through Nancy, Paul Mellon gave me $10,000 a year.
Oh.
For my time at Harvard.
Oh, very nice. Wow.
Yeah, and the other thing about Harvard is they gave me a complete scholarship.
Oh.
As long as I maintained a B+ or more average.
So you had a scholarship and $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
To pay rent and I could eat. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you earned it through your righteous practice.
There you go. That's what do they call that? Merit. Yeah.
Merit. Yes, you acquired merit.
Yeah.
Well, what did you major in at Harvard?
International political economy is what I called it, and because I was an older guy, I got to most of my work was done in seminars and graduate seminars. So my professor, this guy John Montgomery, used to teach government officials from around the third world how to survive unstable political circumstances and get positive things done, so that people could eat and services could happen and things like this. So I got to meet people from, India, Indonesia, wherever, you name it, South America, so on, who were trying in the face of corrupt governments and everything else to make things happen in a way that took care of people. And it was quite an enlightening experience. So there's a certain level of interaction that takes place at Harvard. Once you gain access, that is at a different level of education. And it's more about ideas and conversation and how to do stuff. And it was really rewarding that I finally made that contact with that professor and was able to take those seminars, and I learned quite a bit. But I didn't want to be an academic, so I said, well, I guess I'll go into the business world. But I had no connections, so I ended up going into the first the insurance business, and then I became we developed a regional financial planning firm. It was called New England Advisory Group, and I developed the investment advisory and brokerage division of it, and focused on that for a number of years, and was really engaged and so on. And then at a certain point, it just became like, this is destroying my mind. I can't. This is not intellectually stimulating, and it's not benefiting society. It's not. It's really, this whole business is just exploiting people.
So you felt it was not right livelihood?
No, it wasn't at all.
So what did you do about that?
Well, I became a professional sailboat captain. And then I did a sailboat race around the world and spent a number of years supporting myself in Jessa by being paid to sail boats around the world, and and I would take on crews who would pay tuition to learn how to blue water sail and navigate and so on. And I did that for a number of years.
Do you know Larry Hansen?
I know of Larry Hansen. In fact, we're friends on Facebook, and I know that he does the Canadian version of the Yachtmaster training up in Vancouver. He has a beautiful boat that is something, the type of boat that I would have bought had I bought a boat.
Yeah. I did a podcast with him not long ago.
Oh, good. I remember reading something about him talking about, it was when Diane died, Diane DePrima. He spoke about driving across town in a Volkswagen van or bug to sit with Suzuki Roshi. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he was living with her. It's interesting. He wasn't a hippie really, but he was really close with the most hippie of the hips, Yeah,
exactly.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And so, had you been sailing before? I mean, I don't think you went from the business and just immediately started teaching sailing. There had to be a learning period.
Yeah, well, what happened was I went sailing. A friend invited me to go sailing with him on his boat in the Caribbean. And he said, it was like you were a natural. I just got on the boat, felt at home, knew what to do when, how to helm, so on. and learned and sailed a lot with him. And then I started sailing with a number of other different captains doing deliveries around the East Coast and down to the Caribbean and stuff. And then I signed on to do that. I applied to do this race around the world, and I was accepted. But many people were accepted, but there was huge attrition in the training. And by the time the training was done, and I was a professional sailor, and by the time the race was done, I was a master sailor. You know.
Wow. So, that's great. That's great.
No, it was a spectacular experience. Long distance sailing was the closest I've ever come to the experience of, for instance, being at Tassajara for 90 days.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I experienced it like once the land fell out of view and I was out at sea, I didn't care when we made it to where we were going.
Wow, that's amazing.
I was really at home and
wow.
happy to be out there, whatever happened. But you know, when I came back from that race, I couldn't sleep in a bed, and I couldn't sleep in the house. I couldn't sleep for more than 4 hours at a time. And I would get up in the middle of the night and go outside. I would sleep on the porch. I'd roll up on the couch. It was just really weird. And I couldn't be in buildings, you know, modern buildings that had the sealed windows and so on. Just the air felt like my skin wasn't breathing. It was wild. It was stunningly exhausting and awesomely beautiful. But at a certain point, it just became clear to me. This may sound crazy, but that although this was better than the financial industry, that I wasn't helping people with suffering.
Yeah.
That format could not help people as I should. And that's what turned me back towards practice of, how shall I say? It wasn't like I wasn't practicing. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like to become visibly a practitioner. And visibly a priest, if you will. However, I am that now. I decided I had to do that. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I just switched back. And by that time, Jessa had gotten accustomed to not making a ton of money, and we'd adjusted our.
Oh, tell us who Jessa is.
Oh, Jessa is this incredible woman who's my wife. Amongst other things, like my best friend and buddy.
I remember when you all got together, you told me you were with this wonderful skater. Was it ice skating? Or?
Yeah. She was a short track speed skater.
A what?
A short track speed skater.
Oh.
And she was on the national team, or vying for the national team. And she was at that time she was in her mid-30s. So it's quite remarkable. And I met her in May. I proposed in August. We got married in December. And I had no idea I was going to propose. It just fell out of my mouth. We were doing something together in my kitchen on Appleton Street in Cambridge. And we got married. And this too, she was going back and forth to Marquette, Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula to the Olympic Training Center for short track skating. So we planned our wedding in 1989 through faxes. David Schneider married us. I asked Phil to marry us, but he said, I don't marry people. And David came out and married us, and we had this outrageous wedding, party. It was terrific in a large warehouse space. overlooking what's called Fort Point Channel in the setting sun, and it was just wild. And we had a African Afro-pop jazz band with a man named Stan Strickland, who's a local musician, who was the head of, who played music for us. We had, instead of a wedding cake, we had a fresh-caught sashimi tuna that we stuffed into one another's mouth. And we had hard cider, regular cider, and whatever they call that, small batch beer, and some French pastries for food, and danced into the night. Yeah. We had a wonderful time.
Wow.
And there were like, it was crazy. It was like there were at least 300 people there. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Anyway, yeah, we had a blast.
Yeah.
But and we've been through all sorts of shit together, you know. I mean, people would say to her, "How can you let him do that?" And she'd say, "How can I not? Like, go off and sail for 3 months or blah, blah, blah."
Yeah. That's a good relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think so. And, you know, we've all had our, she's also a fine artist, and she's an incredible cook, and she's intelligent and remarkable. Her father was a relatively famous within a field of architectural photography, which he and another fellow pretty much created. And he used to photograph people like I.M. Pei and Philip Johnson and Gropius, and people of that nature would have nobody else but him photograph their architecture.
Oh,
She grew up in a Philip Johnson house.
Well, I'm not familiar with who that is, but.
Well, Philip Johnson is well, you Google that, you'll see. He's a real jerk. But but at any rate.
But anyway, he was an architect.
Yeah, he was an architect and very famous in the world. Yeah. And I'm sure you've heard the name I.M. Pei, maybe? Sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely heard of him.
Yeah. So she grew up with him as friends. And her father knew people like Buckminster Fuller and so on. Yeah. Crazy world. And it's kind of weird because, you know, I come from a town where I don't know anybody. And nobody knows me. It's kind of wonderful.
Really?
Yeah. Literally, I until Nancy, I never met or knew anybody, so to speak. You know, I knew people, but as far as the world and the expansiveness of the world, I had no idea. I knew that where I was sort of weird, and limited, and longed for something else, but I didn't know what that was. Yeah. And that's literally that's what we could say. Dick and Nancy did that to me.
Well, John, you've sort of come full circle here.
There's more shit to flesh out, but
what have we missed?
Well, I'm not sure. You know, there's more about Nancy in the early years. There's some other stuff other than the melons. You know, it's like there's one dinner party that stands out. Do you know who? So Stanley used to be partners in a publishing firm called Farrar, Straus and Young. After he died, it became Farrar, Straus and Giroux, Robert Giroux. And it was really it's a high-end publishing company. Very powerful, but very boutique. And went to one dinner party at this fellow Roger Strauss's house with his wife. I can't remember her name, but here I was, this kid from Long Island, having dinner with Isaac Bashev as singer, Tom Wolfe, Roger Strauss, George Braziller, who was another book publisher of high-end books, and Robert Giroux, who became the head of Lincoln Center, and Nancy and me. Just kind of, wild and amazing, rarefied world of really high-end, what we'd call East Coast intellectuals, but who were also of European Jewish descent. And just a view of a world that I had no idea existed until there I was in front of it. Other things like that,
Yeah.
But I don't know if you had any specific aims other than to just have this talk and see where it went. But if you do, I'm always open to sharing, and I'm deeply appreciative for the Zen Center and for Dick Baker and the people who stayed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
carried on.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I think I remember at one point I said, this is going to take years of family therapy.
Yeah. Well,
and I was not up for that.
A certain number of people stay.
Yeah.
And they've been, Reb and Steve and Linda at Green Gulch. They help keep it on an even keel in some ways, but there are factions at Zen Center. And then, there's Fu and at Green Gulch. I mean, I don't know. But I'm not really involved with them much. A little bit, a little bit.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Well,
yeah, I sometimes send people there just to experience community practice.
Yeah.
And because it's really hard for people to capture in this outside modern world of being with a group of people all the time.
Yeah.
It's just not something that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great. I have very, very fond memories of Tassajara, Green Gulch, the city center, Sokoji, all that.
Yeah.
It was great. But, and I've really enjoyed being with Dick's group in Germany and Grestone in Colorado. Germany, though, is great. I love it. Oh, yeah. Very comfortable. It's really, it's very different. I mean, he really evolved and his group's evolved. And the woman who's taking over from him is just wonderful. Nicole Baden. Listen to her podcast, man. It was great.
Cool.
And
was he married to her?
No. Nicole is
okay.
She's one of his Dharma heirs, but she's also the going to be the head of Dharma Sangha, America and Germany.
Cool.
And Paul Rosenblum's her backup, but he's older like us.
Yeah.
So and Dick must be 86 now. And
he's 86.
He's going strong, man.
I'm really glad to hear it.
Yeah. Well,
I'm happy for him. That all of that. Yeah. He said to me one time, there are two things he said to me that I'll say. One is, he said, if I were, it's kind of weird to say, if this was my Zen Center, in a sense, he said, I wouldn't have done it this way.
He what?
He wouldn't have done it this way. he would have had a smaller group, so on and so forth. It was like he was living another life of himself in some funny way. And then the other thing he said to me one day, we're driving out from New York City to Nancy's house, and he said to me something like, life is like you're writing a novel, and you finish a chapter and you start a new one. And then he said, you have to look at the Zen Center as like, how can this help me? What am I here for?
Mm-hmm.
To think about it in that way, not just be passive in relationship to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That also there's something larger than just being at the Zen Center. Yeah. I remember those two things. It's quite interesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know if he would have said that to the other people. Maybe, it was just me at that moment. But
yeah. He says different things at different times, and Suzuki sure did. And he gets quoted like each thing is an eternal truth. It's just something he said that moment.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just, the other thing he said is people don't take things just at face value. Yeah. Funny word. Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
So, thank you, David.
Thank you. And remind me the name of your group, One Heart Zen, right?
One Heart Zen, oneheartzen.org.
And it's Cambridge. Well, I think of it as Cambridge, but it's next door to Cambridge Central. Where's that again?
Somerville, it's called.
Somerville.
In fact, there was a big exodus from Cambridge in about 1994 of a lot of the artists and younger people because rent control was done away with to Somerville. Yeah.
Mm.
But Somerville is really a great town to live in. It's I don't know. It's Cambridge is a bit too professional.
Well,
yeah. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. It's really good. And quite an update. I've kept up with a lot of your life, but this really filled in a lot of the blanks.
Cool.
Or we could look at it like one of these giant puzzles. And there's actually most of the pieces still aren't on it, but we've got a framework there.
Yeah, I got you. Cool. You're very kind. Your generosity at this work is just, it reaches, it's limitless. It's really beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, okay, John. Thanks a lot. It's been
Take care,
good.
David. Love you.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Dogga Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.